Well, hello. I do believe we're live. Yeah, we are. And I'm just trying to make sure everything is set up all right here. Yeah, all right, good, excellent, awesome. It is Thursday evening. We're gonna do music. You know what this is if you are here. There's not a lot else to say about it other than the fact that I was extremely punctual this evening. So, I mean, I think there is something to be said for that. Not much, but anyway, yeah. As I put in the video description, I think we have a very, very solid lineup this evening. The bad news is it's more towards the second half. The releases in the first half, some of them are good. There's one for sure that's kind of a stinker. But I included it because gotta kind of talk about it. It is also a bit of a follow-up from an album from a few months back. So it's a bit of a throwback in that regard as well. But yeah, we have 15 releases. One in the electronic genre. That's what we're going to start with. 3 in rap and hip hop. Then we have then we have 4. Is that right? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 4 in rock and metal. And then that leaves us with 7 in pop and indie. So pop and indie, that's kind of where it's at this week. But we'll get to that in a little bit. I am going to transition us over. My streaming software updated too a little bit, so if the transitions are a bit odd, it's because I'm adapting to this on the fly. So let's get right to it. This is the only electronic release that I listened to this week. I will say right now off at the start here that I did have like 2 or 3 other albums that I had listened to, as is typically the case. 2 or 3 albums that I had listened to like once, maybe twice, and that I just didn't have the time to get back around to. So there were a few other electronic releases. I just didn't have the time to come back to them. So next week, I guess. Yes. So this is the only electronic release this week. It is the EP What's Going On, Guys by FTRRTL, which is supposed to stand for Future Reality. The EP here is a throwback sound to the jungle and garage of the UK scene from a few decades ago. There's a lot of vocal and instrumental samples on it, give it more of a hip-hop, underground hip-hop, jazz, soulful edge. It's energetic, yet simultaneously chill, very positive, and it's another example of a release where the 20-minute runtime, the relatively short, under 20-minute runtime, seems to go by much faster. Like, you don't realize that 20 minutes have elapsed as you've been listening to it. So, and I do love the album artwork here too. Yeah, listen to that jazz flute. Can you imagine that, like a jungle drum and bass garage. Starts out with a jazz flute sample. And then the muted cornet. You already know you're in for a good ride. So like it does have that sort of underground hip hop feel to it, but I promise you that's not what this is. Get a bit of that garage sound here. Kettle over there is steaming. I don't know if I can try to Can you see the steam coming out of this thing? We haven't turned the heating on yet. It's not that cold. No, I don't think you can see the steam coming off of it. I'm checking the picture down here. In here we have a bit more of the that jungle vibe. But again, the trumpet line in there. That's right, you feel that. Lots of energy, but also very, very laid back. You get the idea. It's the other two tracks, slightly different, but in that same vein. That is the EP What's Going On, Guys, by the artist Future Reality, or FTRRTL. And that is the only electronic release we have this week. Moving on to rap and hip-hop. We have 9mm, or 9mm, which is supposed to stand for Mean Machine, by the artist Nine Mice. Now, if you've watched these streams before, you might remember about a month ago an album called Damage by an artist, Kai Angel. And back then, kind of went into just basically how it was 20 tracks long, probably should have been about half as long, and even then it was not great, just for various reasons. Nine Mice and Kai Angel are two parts of, again, I'm not deep into the lore. I do not care to be what's called like the Viper Squad here. It is the most like 14-year-old sort of edgy teenage boy thing that you could imagine. But yeah, this release here is one of the most hyped releases, I would say, in the last few months, just in terms of discussion around it. I'm assuming most of the discussion is being led online by teenagers, which is probably fair. So yeah, this is the album that Nine Mice, sort of Kai Angel's counterpart, put out. There's really not much to say about it. It's kind of on the same level as Damage. Here we have 14 tracks, and if we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, again, about half of them are fine. But there's nothing here realistically that's going to have a long-lasting impact musically. I would honestly give this album and Kai Angel's Damage album a shelf life of a few years, and then I would imagine they're going to be lost to the sands of time. So I normally wouldn't talk about this, but just like I talked about Macan, I kind of have to, because it was a big deal in its own way. It got a lot of discussion, and even though I don't personally care for it, it is, I think, from time to time worth pointing out what's going on. And we're going to talk about how this maybe is also a reflection of what in some ways is going on musically in the States, at least as I can see it from afar. Now, to be sure, there are a decent number of just rabid fanboys, and I'm assuming fangirls online, who are saying that like this is the best piece of art they have ever consumed. Again, if you're 10, you really haven't consumed much art. If you're 20 and you're saying that, get outside, go to the library, go to a concert, try to expand your horizons a bit. But as much as I crap on this release, and I will play it here in a little bit, it is possible that it is one of those things like with nu metal, that in about 20 years, this sound will become relevant again. but I don't think that's the case. If in 20 years from now I'm still doing this and this sound has come back around, somebody remind me if you're still watching this or if I'm still mentally here enough to even give a shit. So this reminds me a lot of, for various reasons, Playboi Carti. Obviously, they're sonically is a lot in common. This is a little bit more in terms of the sound that's being used here on a lot of the tracks, closer to archive core, which I do think is more of a Russian creation at this point in time. I haven't seen much of it in the English language music sphere, but I could be mistaken. SoundCloud is it is a deep and dark and kind of weird labyrinth that's just not worth the time of exploring for the most part, especially if you have a life. But I know that on this album, some of the producers that worked with Playboi Carti's, I think his latest release, I Am Music, they also are present here for at least one track. So just that right there is enough of connection, and it does further solidify the overall. Like, what's Carti's Opium Gang or whatever, right? I think Viper Squad is just supposed to be like shitty Russian knockoff of Opium Gang, realistically. And I think with I Am Music and Playboi Carti, since that album dropped, the people who were literally willing to sell a kidney to get it a month early are the only people still talking about it, and everyone else has kind of moved on with their lives, which is understandable. I think that's the general situation here. I'm just going to play a little bit too so you get the idea, so that we can all suffer together a little bit. Oh, and the artwork. We're going to talk about the artwork because I have a bit of a bone to pick with it. It's scary. So again, that heavy distortion, terminally online sound is what I kind of associate with archive core here. Right? Now this is a little bit more pop leaning too, so. And I will say, the tracks where Nine Mice does lean into the pop sound are the better ones on the album. The problem is, musically, it's probably fine. It's not great, but it's fine. It's that lyrically, it is this sort of vapid consumer culture shit where every line is either a reference to a reference of something from Western pop culture or the name of a brand. It is like, it's basically audio brain rot at this point in time. But it's interesting too, because I feel like brain rot in general, at least in the age of the internet, and ignoring the whole Italian brain rot and that type of stuff, but just brain rot in general comes to consuming too much internet culture, whereas this feels like it is a consumption of too much, almost like from, I guess, Fashion Week is what it sounds like. This, but I don't know. Anyway, yeah. So always kind of references to Western pop culture or the name of a brand, which is actually kind of ironic, because if you look at the references here, Nirvana, Jenna is a reference to Jenna Ortega, Kill Bill, obviously Evian because fucking French water, I guess. Chanel number 9, Less Than Zero, which I have to assume is a reference to the Bret Easton Ellis novel. Probably should have thought about that a second. This one, right here. Thanks, Mom. The original paperback copy from 1985. I have to assume that that track is a reference to this novel right here. Why else you would call it Less Than Zero, I don't know. So what it comes down to is we have a bunch of references to things in Western culture and artists. Nine Mice himself in an interview even mentioned The National, the group The National, an indie rock group, or indie whatever you want to call it group, who I think is fantastic. So it is pretty clear that Nine Mice is aware of musicians and artists who have poured themselves into the work, but that's not here at all. So that sort of dichotomy, it feels like this window dressing of, guys, see, look, I know Tarantino, I know Nirvana, I'm aware of fashionable Western things, I even have maybe heard of Bret Easton Ellis. But it's I don't know. It's like a 10-year-old repeating a Family Guy joke where the reference goes back to an aspect of American culture from the first Bush presidency. It's like, you don't understand it, so maybe it's kind of cool and interesting to you, but just lay off it a little bit. Yeah. So there's just nothing here lyrically. And I have to assume that he did not put any time or thought into the lyrics unless he is as shallow as they make him out to be. Now, like I said, the tracks that lean more into the pop end of things, they are better. They're definitely better. They're more enjoyable. And I think if he would lean into this direction, this is a... Like, even the auto-tune I'm okay with here. Like, okay, sure. Right? Like... Also, this is... like... this sort of unrequited love type of thing. Or... I mean, the English is kind of cringe, but regardless, it's not about vapid consumerism and just surface level product placement. These, like even this, right, which leans into the archive core sound. It feels like it's actually doing something ultimately. It's still not brilliant or even necessarily good, but it shows promise, I guess. And I could listen to this, right? If it were to come on, I would be like, okay, yeah, that's okay. This is probably the best track right here, though, Sugar, because it just comes out of nowhere. Like, after 11 tracks of all of that from before, you get this ode to the 80s. And like, it's kind of good and fun, right? Okay. So yeah, musically, the thing is, it's one of those things where musically, it could be fine, and I think if you don't listen to the lyrics, then you can probably get actually a little bit more enjoyment out of it. I just cannot stand the text. But but there are tracks. It is one of those things where it does feel like as you can see from my liked tracks, the latter half is actually where it comes together. So again, like I said, half of the album, pretty good. I don't have a problem with it. Now, this. Why is it so small? This, and this. You cannot tell me that he was not attempting to emulate the Nine Inch Nails sin. Like, it's got the cross down here. It's got the fat slant right there. Like, 100%. And as somebody for whom Nine Inch Nails is one of their favorite groups, this is just unacceptable to be like, again, this is one of those musical references where it's like, see guys, I have a knowledge of other artists, but I'm just going to superficially use that as a calling card for clout, I guess, or as a way for me to show that like I actually know a lot and so fuck that. Minus 1 million points from this, specifically for that too. The less than zero and all of the other references were pretty hard bones for me to swallow in general. But that was kind of the final one on the cake. And it was one of those things where I had actually seen the artwork for a long time. And then when I was listening to it and just kind of looked at it, it's like, this looks strangely familiar. And it absolutely is. This is 100 million times better than anything on that album, and probably anything that Nine Mice will ever put out. So, Nine Mice is 9mm, absolute dog shit. There are some redeeming tracks on it, but I think overall, similar to Kai Angel's Damage, it is music that you listen to it, and if you look at all of the visuals that go in connection with it, and you have to wonder, what the hell is wrong with the people? I mean, again, they're teenagers for the most part. If you do see grown adults listening to it, though, you do have to wonder, like, probably got restraining, or there are no restraining orders in Russia. So if they did have restraining orders, that's the type of individual who would probably have restraining order, or probably not be allowed within 200 meters of a school. One of those types of situations. So anyway, I'm not going to sit here and shit talk that album. You've heard it yourself. You get the general idea. Why everyone was excited about it, I don't know. This is another album which is slightly better, but not a massive improvement. This is YASMI with the album Я предсказываю. So, what I'll say with this album, because, I mean, a decent number of tracks here I had a fine time with. Most of the time with rap albums, also the album artwork here, I couldn't actually tell what book he was reading, but this is also so goddamn cringe. It's just, I don't know, man. Most of the time with rap albums, the first listen leaves me unmoved or doubtful. I kind of have to get into the lyrics, but with subsequent spins, I kind of start to see everything more clearly and appreciate it more. The opposite actually happened here. The first time I listened to this, I was vibing along, right, having a good time, snatching a few lines from each track that stood out. And there are some decent lines on this album. I'm not going to pretend that there aren't. But I came back to it. And the backing tracks, the instrumentals, the delivery, even kind of the rapping, just the lyrical content over the 15 or 16 tracks, just kind of began to melt into one big mass. In the same way that like a Snickers bar or a Twix is good because it has individual layers, but if you leave it in a hot sun and it melts and then it re-solidifies, it is not necessarily, and it's like, it's still sweet. You'll still kind of enjoy it, but it's not really that good. This is the equivalent musically of like a re-solidified melted Snickers bar. Everything is still there. All of the pieces are still there, but it's just not what you would want it to be. Part of the problem too is that these tracks are, I mean, it's like, this is TikTok brain, right? A minute and a half. When some of these tracks feel like they're just getting off the ground, they come to an end. It's the same themes and the same formulation coming up over and over again. And the delivery is one that I have encountered multiple times this year. It's that sort of, it's just like really super inflected, hushed, cracking voice thing, which I associate with Friendly Thug in the St. Petersburg scene. Gletcher Gang, I think, is what they call themselves. But this is actually more connected to Makan. Now, A Blood Diet is here, and Makan is here. And I probably should have made that connection too, because YASMI was featured on Makan's album Bratland, which came out like a few months ago. He was featured on it at least twice. So, yeah. In short, and I will actually play the music here in a second, there are going to be a lot of people who are going to be like, massa, right? This is like meat. This is good. This is amazing. There are going to be plenty of people who hear this once and think it's fine, like I did. But it's an album that becomes less somehow with each repeated listen. That said, if you don't understand the lyrics, you might get a few more spins out of it before that sort of sensation of repetition begins to kick in. So make of that what you will. I mean, it does have a specific vibe. Я делал деньги на слезах. That type of delivery. Maybe he talks like that too. Again, if you don't understand Russian, then the pronunciation, it's like that sort of mush mouth pronunciation too. Which again, I get it's rap and like it's got that sort of like hard trap gangster feel. Белый, 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 белый. Успех, не успех. Like, I don't know. It's like I said, the first time I heard it, it was just like, okay, yeah, because I was just sort of immersing myself into the atmosphere. This is probably the most, and I don't know, there's probably some story for it. This is, in my opinion, the most hilarious, but also the worst track on the album. Yasa, I'm a wasp. What the fuck? What is he even talking about? Like, I get it, it's probably a rap, like, just my rap gang thing, we're wasps or something like that. But it's just hilarious because in English, a wasp is white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, which, like, when you translate it, it turns it into the funniest, it feels like an SNL sketch, right? I'm a wasp! And then you could just imagine them with, like, their cardigan sweaters and everything like that, and yes, yeah, you are my dude. You are. I'll play like another one here just to. But you can see how the instrumentals kind of are the same thing over and over again. He just kind of repeats the same words and phrases over and over again on each track. And if they're a minute and a half long, you basically have a situation where it's chorus, verse, chorus, end of song. That's not an album, that's a proof of concept, so. Like, he literally said suka 20 times in as many seconds, which is bitch in Russian, just for those of you who are not familiar. And, like, I get it, there are rappers in English who curse constantly as well, too. But if that is the crux of your song, then it's not really a song, is it? So, anyway, it's fine. It's better than Nine Mice. I'll put it like that. This is another album that people were just like, this is one of the best albums of the year. And when I see this type of stuff online, I kind of begin to understand why there is so much hate online in the Russian rap community, because there is a slightly older generation, and I'm sure it's kind of the same in the States at this point in time, slightly older generation who listen to this and see this just like, this is dog shit. And then there's like the younger generation just like, you guys don't understand this, which is probably fair in some regards, but objectively, no, it is dog shit. So that is the album Я предсказываю. The artist is YASMI. He's a wasp, if you missed it. He's actually taking his cardigan sweater off in this image right here. He's and you know, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, probably went to Yale. Maybe he's in the Skulls and the Bones. Maybe this is an overture to that. So now, moving on. There is actually one good rap release this week, and it comes from the artist Зараза, who is out of Cheboksary. Now, I discovered Зараза last year with his album Вы попали на мой район, which I still love that album. I think that was fantastic. This EP is the complete opposite of what we've just been looking at when it comes to rap and hip hop. There are only 6 tracks. It's only 15 minutes long, but the musical variety, the change in delivery, lyrics that touch again and again on similar themes, but from different approaches, song structures that are more than just chorus, verse, chorus, end. This is actual music, so that's a big thing to keep in mind. And while obviously it's 6 tracks, it's an EP, it's not as good as Вы попали на мой район. This really just further strengthens my conviction that Зараза is, like, he reminds me so much of Young Jeezy from like 2008, the recession era of Young Jeezy. It's different. It is different, but there's just something about it. So I'll just play a little bit. I mean, it might be his ability to go from that sort of harder rapper side to a more sung, right, chorus aspect. Like his ear for melodies or melodies. Кроме тусовок на зарплату. Тебе-то самому это не кажется забавным. Ну а если не дурак, то готов ли ты столько ждать? Без денег. Also, the instrumentals feel a little bit not old school, but I guess what is slowly becoming old school at this point in time. Побеждать сквозь колонки, мне слышно ложь. Кого хочешь тут наебать? Я говорю вам как игрок, вы не умеете играть. И сколько можно воровать свой трэп, сколько можно врать в строках о том, как ты ебешь под таблетками чью-то, блядь, окей, плевать на смысл в тексте, на флоу и на респект. right? Like there's these build-ups to the tracks. It doesn't just jump right into it. There's definitely a heaviness to it, but also not fully. And I mean, again, like I said, the song's all for Cheboksary is not like, not on pretty much anybody's list of places to visit in Russia. It is a post-Soviet industrial city on the Volga. And most of the tracks focus around just like the difficulties of life in a post-industrial city. So did I not just jump? Okay. Okay. Yeah. But again, right? His approaches to it are differently, right? Actually, the first track I played is about like, is it even possible to get like to earn anything in the music industry, in the rap game, and that type of stuff? Is it possible to climb your way out of it, or are you gonna go back to crime? Blah, blah, blah.
Мягкой посадки, это мой город, в нем снова осадки. Тут если ты шаткий, то после не жалуйся, что жизнь тебя вновь кладет на лопатки. Судьба раскидала капканами свои пасхалки, ребусы, пазлы, загадки. Тут так незаметно, но быстро плывут мои дни черно-белые, будто касатки. А так все в порядке, хотя иногда я тут путаюсь, пятница или среда, выжидая момент, дабы высечь искру, что потаяло. Сердце мое изо льда, время будто вода, и оно нас с тобою когда-нибудь точно сотрет без следа.
Anyway, I'll edit that, yeah. Зараза, which kind of means infection, but Zarazа is also kind of a derisive term for a not very good, annoying individual, is maybe the best way to put it. Anyway, got a kind of a fun name too in Russian. Zarazа, the EP is Pepel, yeah, which is ash. Again, kind of an allusion to well, you know, the sort of dirt and grime of a post-industrial city. And yeah, this is just a much better rap and hip-hop release than the other stuff. So that's actually the top choice for rap and hip-hop this week, but that's kind of because the other two that I talked about aren't really good. I probably could have just decided not to talk about them, but I do think from time to time it's kind of important to show that, like, there's some not good stuff here too. If I talked about all of the bad albums I listened to, these streams would be like 2 hours long, and I don't really want to do that, and I don't want to subject you to it as well. But moving on to rock and metal, we got a short roundup in this one too. Two EPs actually. So the first one is by the group Iknownothing and is the EP Disconnected Seasons. It's autumn, which seems to be the season for post-rock releases here. This one is different from the two that we listened to last week. Here, there is a massive collection of musicians, 11 across the 4 tracks, allowing for a wider selection of instrumentation. There's vocals on one of these tracks, Dom, which is the first time vocals have been featured in any sort on Iknownothing track in, what did they say? Well, for a good number of years. So, yeah, the opener, Voices, feels like a song from a hit JRPG video game, which I mean that as a compliment. Yeah, some people have called this post-rock emo post-rock, which you can hear a bit, specifically on the second track. But I would say overall, the sound is a little bit more mixed and different. And it's like 12 minutes long. But it does feel longer. So this is the opposite of the future reality release, What's Going On Guys, at the beginning, where here, because there's such like a slight prog element with post-rock, you can kind of hear the emo there, right? I'm not really sure how to describe it, but if you're familiar with emo music, But yeah, anyway, this release feels longer than 12 minutes, but in a good way. Like, you kind of get pulled into it. Also, great album artwork. Just simple, but eye-catching. Let's turn it up. I'm gonna do the JRPG. It's towards the end where it like you can hear the instruments here though, right? Obviously. Yeah, this feels like it could be out of the massive opening scene of some Japanese RPG video game, with the strings coming in and then like Tales of Phasmagoria or whatever the hell you want to call it. And then this is the one with vocals, not much, and they don't do much. They are just there as an additional musical element, not as actual lyricism and something to. Well, I mean, there are the moments. This is specifically the emo part too, But yeah, for the most part, they're that kind of whoa, whoa, whoa type vocals. Okay, yeah, so anyway, that's the EP Disconnected Seasons by Iknownothing. Again, just a nice little post-rock release for people who prefer their music just to be without lyrics for the most part. I know there were some vocals in there too, but moving on. Yeah, we've got the group, I'm assuming it's DEXDBELL, is how I'm supposed to pronounce it, DEXDBELL, with the album Sport Metal. I do think this is AI generated, so but okay, whatever, we'll go. This is death metal, metal core, meets Russian funk music. Russian funk music it's not funk, it's PHONK. That's an entire subgenre of electronic music that's kind of hard to explain. I will show an example of it on this album. But yeah, that crossover of like death core, metal core meets funk, I'm actually surprised I have not run into before. There's just, I actually had a lot of fun with this album. There's a lot of dumb new metal one-hit wonder type energy across the whole thing, but each track has got it, so it's not a one-hit wonder type of vibe. Like, the quality is consistent. Feels like the type of thing that would have been playing at some X Games knockoff 20 years ago. Yeah, nostalgia is just a hell of a drug, but this is, in 2025, the modern synthetic street version of nostalgia, which, yeah. That electronic sound is funk, right? PHONK. Like this sort of super, for like street racing and drifting, but they just mix it with deathcore and metalcore. Also, the song titles are pretty juvenile too, for the most part, but also kind of appropriate. There are English lyrics, but again, the funk sound, right? Again, really kind of heavy distortion, or it feels like the like whatever the synthesizer or the synth pad is super analog. The weird, I don't know what the term is for those guitar. I'm sure there's a technical term for it, but as a non-guitar player, whatever, the weirs. That's a very new metalish type thing as well. So yeah, it's just got this energy throughout the whole thing, which, like I said, it's 40 minutes long, right? It doesn't overstay its welcome. And I do the Mother Russia track at the end is kind of the most inventive. Also sticks out like a sore thumb after the other 11 tracks, but it feels like a remix somehow, and less like the deathcore, metalcore elements just get dropped. But I guess as a way of closing out the album, that's fine too. So yeah, that is the album Sport Metal by DEXDBELL. It's fun. It's definitely fun. I will give it that. It's kind of dumb, but it's dumb fun. And that's okay. That's for metal, that's definitely a category. I see, I'm probably being too generous with metal as opposed to like Nine Mice or whatever, but I don't think DEXDBELL pretends like they're really deep artistic individuals. I think they're just like two dudes who are kind of having a bit of a fun time. But anyway, all right, so these next two albums, we're going to have a little bit of a story time first. So one of my favorite groups ever, I already mentioned Nine Inch Nails, but another one is Every Time I Die. And it's a group that I saw here in Moscow. I remember going to some dumpy club a few blocks north of the Theater of the Soviet Army, or Theater of the Red Army here in Moscow, I should say, which is in the area of Metro Station Dostoyevskaya now. And the group that opened for Every Time I Die was a wild show, which is like it feels like they probably just broke into, obviously they did not, but it feels like they just kind of broke into the place and threw a concert, because it did not feel like the type of place you would normally have a show. Anyway, the group that opened for Every Time I Die was a group called Grizzly Knows No Remorse. I can actually go ahead. Grizzly. I could move my keyboard a little bit. Grizzly Knows No Remorse. This group right here. Yeah, it would have been around 2011 when I was at the concert. So Berotica. Yeah, somewhere in that era, the Berotica era. Anyway, Grizzly Knows No Remorse, one of the best Russian metal groups to have ever existed. They no longer exist, right? Just like Every Time I Die, they kind of disbanded a number of years ago. They've ceased to exist, but the members spun off, and even when Grizzly was still around, they had already started doing side projects, and these next two albums are connected to Grizzly Knows No Remorse. Komunist here was originally a project with members of Grizzly Knows No Remorse, I will say that currently there are none of the Grizzly members in it, but we're still going to talk about it because they're still, like, they got started because of that. And Grizzly Knows No Remorse, I do want to highlight that. Hell of a group. Yeah, the same DNA. So this is the group Komunist. And the EP here is Vtihárja. I think that's how you pronounce it. I actually meant to... Vtihárja. It is... Vtihárja. Oh, yeah. I guess I did know that. Vtihárja, which is like on the low, sort of keep it quiet. Vtihárja is post-hardcore sound at the foundation, but it's got more of a bluesy southern rock, kind of like groups like Prong or Clutch. This isn't metal. I mean, there's definitely metal here. For some people, this will be considered metal. But I would say this just got like at 2025, like a heavy rock sort of sound. It's like pretty straightforward. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't. This is not metal. This is just hard rock, right? So now, I'll be honest. I think the first track is probably the best one. The third and the fourth ones are nice as a whole. It is one this is an easy one to just sort of like throw on, and you get a little bit of that kind of post-hardcore oddity as well. So, yeah, you get the sound, like a hard rock sound here, which is one that we don't focus on, we don't feature too much, because I feel like a lot of groups that try to do it are just kind of local band type sound, and this is a bit more refined. So the EP here by Komunist is Vtihárja, which is, yeah, it's a fine sort of hard rock release. Now, the next album, the final album in rock and metal, is by a group called Montezuma's Revenge. The album is VETO. This is the group that I would say feels like the true evolution of Grizzly Knows No Remorse, which is largely thanks to it still having the front man from Grizzly, Andrei Cantuzov-Vantula, which is almost certainly not his real name. Andrei is, but I don't think Cantuzov-Vantula. I might be wrong, but he actually also has another project currently cooking, Rat Razor, I think is what it's called, but they've only put out 2 songs, so we'll probably talk about them in the future when they get an actual full release put out. Yeah, so if Grizzly Knows No Remorse was this sort of chaotic, southern, post-hardcore, similar to Every Time I Die, Montezuma's Revenge is that as well. There are some tracks here that do feel like modern Grizzly. But there's a ton of stoner rock, sludge, and doom metal, just like heavy riffs. You can actually see as the album progresses, the tracks do get a little bit longer, reaching over the 9-minute mark for the last two. So yeah, the sludgy, doom, stoner sort of riffs going on in there. It's kind of difficult metal in the sense that it's a little bit of everything across the length of the album. It starts out as that chaotic post-hardcore, moves into like a stoner, a bluesy stoner rock, and then it turns into this sort of sludge outfit by the end. So if you're more keen to one specific sound or genre, this is difficult in that regard. But yeah, if you just sort of like well-produced, really solid metal, then this has got the variety and the intensity that is going to keep you interested. And it is going to, it's like one that you can listen to many, many times because it does have a very clear shift in mood. This feels like Grizzly, just for anybody who hasn't heard it before. A little bit like Mastodon, too. Right, that time signature shift right there. Kind of here as well. And then Grizzly wasn't quite like this, but again, like I said, this feels like the logical trajectory of that group, or at least Andre's output. But we move further into the album. And it doesn't dial back the intensity, but it dials back the chaoticness a little bit, right? There's a little bit more, even in the vocals, right? Obviously, it's a little bit consistent, more smooth and level. But obviously that's the halfway mark. The tracks are still relatively short. By the time you get to the final track, Gravity here, we've slowed to a crawl. So you can hear a little bit of the sludge, a little bit of the doom influences as well. Probably a little bit of the stoner rock influences here too. Again, it's kind of hard to feature parts of a 9-minute track, but it's such a slow and thick track, but right, you can see it started with such I guess vitriol and just uncontained, unbridled energy, and now we're into what's the word I'm looking for? Not phlegmatism, phlegmatic, but just like the sort of just thick and slow, and kind of with the track like Gravity, the lyrics talk about this person being stuck on a space station far away and like remote from everyone. So the tonal shift over the course of the record too, I don't know, it works. It's one of those things where it's hard to sit here and talk about, but it's one of those things that if I played you the first track and the last track, it wouldn't make sense together, but over the course of the whole album, it does unfold, and you do get it. You do get it, because it's 8 tracks, and you can see it is over 47 minutes long. But that is the album VETO by the group Montezuma's Revenge, and that I would say is the best rock and metal release of the week, which leaves us with seven indie releases we got to talk about. Indie, it's having a hell of a month, and just a loaded week. Now, the first EP we're going to talk about here is Lегкий Металл, or a light metal. Sonia, I think that's Sonia, is how we say it. We have an artist who originally, not great album artwork, I'm just going to throw that out there. Originally comes from Armenia, but obviously has relocated to Moscow. Songs which are easily identifiable as sort of pop and R&B, but there are moments on the tracks where non-Western influences can be heard. The big thing that makes this worth listening to are the layered vocals, which honestly feel a lot of times like the core of the songs more so than the main vocal part. There's some funky elements in here too. It's just like kind of nice indie pop, I guess, if you will. And she has worked with the artist or the group Bazaar, who I have talked about during the streams more than once. First Quarter, one of the better indie albums Bazaar put out as well too. So she's worked with Bazaar. It's a pretty good, I guess, stamp of approval, if you will. Yeah, right. The layered vocals. I'm just gonna jump around though. You can do it. Also, why does this reminds me of like a one-hit wonder song from the radio of the 1990s? Can I say, hey, 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 what's going on? That's the song I'm thinking of. Yeah, the layered vocals really pop the tracks a little bit, push them, give them a little bit more weight than they otherwise would have. You get the idea. 5 tracks, just kind of nice, light, indie pop, solo female singer, indie pop type stuff. That is Sonia with the EP Lегкий Металл. Moving on. We've reached the tab limit. Of course we have. We are up to Bюро again with another EP. So this is actually the 4th time we've talked about them now. Once in the summer, once in the spring, and once in the winter. because they had a quartet of EPs that were dedicated to each of the seasons, and the seasons ended in summer, and I figured that would be the last that we talked about this group. But in honor of the group's birthday, they released an epilogue to the cycle, one with tracks which the artist explained didn't make it onto the previous releases. It's what remained between the seasons while simultaneously permeating them the whole year. I don't think this is necessarily as strong of a release as the other seasons, but it is still a very solid trio of songs. I do really like Bюро. So this is Осколки, Кода. And I'm just going to... They even have the colors mixing, right?
Сегодня снова вместе. Вчера играли в города. Надежно спрятал крестик. И снова позабыл слова. Нишки, след
Just really good indie music, right? Which, hey, guess what? We're going to be having a lot more of that soon. Consider this the appetizer, not the coda. And again, I've already talked about the EPs, but if you missed them before, in the summer, spring, winter, fall. So, yeah, their first album came out last year. I actually heard them last year too. Just kind of came out of nowhere. Have been very consistent with releases. And they've all been of very good quality. So. You know the sound, that indie sound. Indie, right? Without pop, without rock, just indie. So yeah, again, that is the EP Осколки, Кода by Bюро. Really good. Really discovering the tab limit. All right. The next album here is Каждый день, дождь, or Rain Every Day by Nishubert. Also, really good album artwork here. I'm not going to lie. I got this sort of blurred out city in the background, this depressive looking thing here. It is depressive post-Soviet, post-punk that's got the doomer vibe and drive. I saw someone write how currently in St. Petersburg, the mornings and evenings are at the point where there's no difference between them, and the daylight hours slip away unnoticed because the weather is overcast and dismal, but that this album goes perfectly with this period of the year. Yeah, that is this music, 100%. It's not reinventing the post-punk genre or even the post-Soviet post-punk genre, but it is a good release in a genre that is very popular here, which means that there are a lot of mediocre releases in that genre. So this level of output does need to be held up and sort of featured.
Ветер заметает одинокий след. Это часть мира в дыму сигарет. Нам не осталось ни любви, ни тепла. Это нормально, такая судьба. Одиночество — это смерть. Так всю жизнь, каждый день дождь. Одиночество.
Like, there's definitely that sort of post-punk kind of gloomy vibe, but there's the energy there too, so it's got a nice balance. So the song titles Одиночество, which is like loneliness or being alone. Ничего нет, there is nothing. Электричка is the commuter train. Тоска, which is like melancholy, airplane, planets, tears. Song titles are kind of also all right, one last taste here.
Закрывай глаза, здесь и так темно. С неба летит звезда, пустая рука в окно. Землю жгут огни, и ночь кидает сны. За руку держи.
I think you get the idea. So that is the album Каждый, день, дождь by Nishubert. All right, now come to the final four albums. And the first one in the final four is not... This is a really good album. It's a really fun album. It's a really good album. And these four albums are also good in their own regard, but this one I think is the most different from the next three. This is Dorndom by the artist Ivan Dorn. This is the artist's first album in 8 years, his first in Russian in over a decade. Ivan Dorn is an artist who was a big deal in the Russian music scene a decade ago, and he kind of dropped off the radar. Like I said, his first album in 8 years. So he came back to it at his own speed. And I have seen, everyone has talked about this album at this point in time, I think. And what I'll say is, it feels now like Dorn is making music at his own speed, and he's making music that's fun and enjoyable for him. He's not attempting to conquer the charts or reclaim his throne or whatever. The good news is that what is fun and enjoyable for him is light, breezy, funky cocktail that honestly transcends the language barrier. You don't need to understand Russian, right? The album here hops around in terms of sound. I'm just going to go ahead and jump us into it. But even within singular tracks, there are going to be things that shift around. But from start to finish, this album is the sound of an artist who knows what he's doing and trusts that his audience has matured alongside him enough to follow him along some of the more eclectic musical alleyways that he chooses to go down. This is just, I say this regularly, but this is a good album. It's just kind of to put on, and it's got such... This is kind of the album that you would hope or maybe expect Justin Timberlake would put out, right? Like, instead of him attempting to do Sexy Back again, like, just do his funky, jazzy little thing, but just as an older guy now. and have fun with it and don't be so serious. That's this energy right here. And that's kind of Ivan Dor in a lot of ways. He was not the Russian Justin Timberlake, but I feel like it's not the worst comparison.
Кошмар, что за людишка с дефектом слов? Этому типу не поможет лайф-коуч, это просто позор. Не, ну real, come on. Это местный топчик. Стоп. Не местный лом, а село. Ему в толуме не пить шато.
So we got like this kind of light funky thing, and then
Теперь моя соль. Я оближу сегодня все твои тату.
I didn't even bother to keep track of what genre he's going in because each track is kind of in its own little world.
Залипли снова в сладкий сон. Такой же сахарный, как Dorn, что даже то, что спать.
And the lyrics aren't important. Just
Мы добавим грязь, порвем стиль, протрем штаны и перевяжем пальцы.
like I don't even really listen to him most of the time. I'm just having a good time.
Не будем прятаться. Так и не приземлюсь.
Right? 3 tracks in, 3 totally different styles. But you can kind of hear how they're all similar, right? They've all got the same musical taste in a way.
Убегай, убегай, только не обнимай, только не обнимай. Как захотела и ты, но мне туда вредно смотреть. Что ж, понимаю, лети.
Now we have like just weird sort of street. It is literally called street percussion. So and then like this sort of big production, fast, not quite big beat, but we're moving in that direction. And then we end with this just like really long, again, and it just is all about the number 432. I don't, maybe there's a reference there I'm not getting, but like, just kind of sings 432, 432, like in various combinations. I don't know. It's just musically good. It's just good. It's fun. Each track is different, but as a whole, it still makes sense. Like you understand it still. Like, it doesn't feel like a bunch of random things slapped together. Partly that's due to sequencing, the overall ebbing and flowing of the tracks. But yeah, really good album, really fun album, and it's one where even though it is in Russian, you don't really need, I don't listen to the lyrics. I'm just enjoying myself when I listen to it. So that is the album Dorndom, which is a play on the phrase Durdom, which is like a crazy house, an insane asylum. Dorndom by Ivan Dorn. Okay, that's kind of like the last pop album, we'll say. From here we get into just indie, straight up indie. Up first we have Деревянные, киты with Я не договорила. This is short, this is tight, but this is still very much an album, even though it is just clocking in at over 20 minutes. But this is mainly in terms of substance and statement. Деревянные киты, which is wooden whales, have become one of the biggest names in the Russian indie scene, and this release coming only a year after Всё, что я хочу тебе сказать, which honestly last year was hailed as one of the best indie releases then. This kind of cements their status in the indie scene here. This feels a little bit more energetic versus the last outing. This is focused on the emotional fallout of a breakup, whereas «Всё, что я хочу тебе сказать» from last year was, I think, connected more to a death in the family, so that also makes a little bit more sense. But yeah, it's about an emotional falling out, kind of a breakup, and just the daily grinding down of modern life in the big city. There are moments on this album to a lot, frankly, that remind me of Dirty Projectors, which is a group that 20 years ago I did not think I would be recalling so often in 2025. A lot has been written about this release, all of it praise in one form or another. So I'll just kind of let this do the speaking for itself. I do think that this is, and like the next two releases, some of the best indie releases of the year. This one and the next two. Just a stacked week in that regard. But hey, it's okay.
Там в Москве ураган, с неба вылилось море. Объясни себе сам, что мы с тобой такое. Мимо сорванных фраз, между теми другими. Бесит меня твое имя, бесит меня твое имя.
Musically, I would say, well, I mean, from the last album, musically and from the vocal, lyrical perspective too, there's growth. Again, if you haven't heard the ones from before, «Всё, что я хочу тебе сказать», last year's album, was also very, very good. And this does feel like the yin to the yang there. But this is probably a better release than that one.
В тревожной голове трамвай с ВДНХ. Опять исчезло, неизменно лишь одно. Неизменно лишь одно. Неизменно.
Right? Like, it's, I don't know, it's got this sort of big indie sound. And it's just, if you're familiar with indie music, this just feels like indie music. The complexity of the arrangements, the sort of all the different layers going on. The fact that it's kind of hard to pin down. I mean, other than it just being indie, like what the genre technically is. Like that's kind of indie. You get the idea. Again, it's one of those where just good to sit down with it. That is «Я не договорила» by Деревянные, киты, wooden whales. Moving on, we got two left. I would love to sit here longer, but it's getting late. This is the album Dom, or Home, by Bond с кнопкой. Thanks to Twitter and TikTok, there's been a flurry of discussion about this album and artist over the last week or two. People have been defending it against a wave of criticism about how genuine the music is, or whether or not the lyrics are bad or cringe, which I'll give my thoughts on that here in a second. But as far as to whether or not this music is good, it's great. This is a great album. People have said that musically this isn't anything new, that the sound has existed in indie rock or indie music for a good decade or so abroad, which is fair, but not here in Russia. And I think if this picks up a little bit more and is given time to take root and mix with the Russian music traditions, it could yield something truly special in the near future. Currently, yes, it is a phenomenal sort of record. It runs the gamut of emotions and musical mood. And as far as dumb lyrics, yeah, they're here too, but that's kind of a situation with every single album. If you sit there and start looking at the lyrics, you're almost on 9 times out of the 10, you're going to find at least some kind of idiotic line that is not really great. But music scenes love to do it. And I do think that there's this one thing, I feel like oftentimes there's a lot of discussion about like which countries are the most Russophobic or hate Russians the most, or like are the most set against Russians. And I would actually say that the country most set against Russians are Russians themselves. It is a country where I feel like there's just a massive amount of infighting over weird little stuff. I know it happens in the States. I know it happens in every single country. But like, if you're familiar with Russian society and just waves of emigration and revolutions and then things after, like, it's just a very common thing. So the fact that we have a hot new artist who is kind of taking the brunt of it, I don't know, maybe it's like a crabs in the bucket type situation. I do think part of it too is that it's the final track on this album, which is the one I will start with here, Kuchnia. This one blew up on TikTok earlier this year, in the spring, I think. And I think as a result, people came to hate it, probably, because they'd heard it so many times. And so that when the follow-up, Cider, came out, they were so sick of the first one that they just immediately started tearing the new one down. Or they were upset that the new song didn't ignite the same feelings in them that this one did. Also, the lead singer, the voice does not fit the face. It's such like a little innocent baby face, little kid, it feels like, but a little bit of the Yellow by Coldplay, or Clocks, I should say. So that was the first song that blew up. This is the one that came out, and this is the one that's been having all the discussion about it. And yeah, the lyrics are a little goofy, but doesn't mean it's a bad song. I don't know if I would have gone with this as the second single, but I do kind of get it too. It's got like a little bit. It's kind of like sing-along aspect. But I mean, there's just, whistling and Russian music. But yeah, right, like, there are, we got the throat singing here. This is what I'm talking about, right? Like, take some of the elements that you find across the various cultures of Russia and then mix them into the Western indie sound. And I mean, you get something fresh. The thing with this album too is that so many of the tracks, most of them in fact, feel at the same time super intimate and the type of thing that could be sung on an acoustic guitar in somebody's kitchen, or, and then thanks to the arrangement and the production on the album, like these massive sweeping epic tracks, which is not a songwriter, but it feels like it's probably not the easiest thing to do. I don't know how that works out. Again, arrangement versus the actual song construction. Right. There was such intensity and distress in that last track, right? And then we jump to this, which is I'm gonna play one snippet too of the next track too, but I think you get the idea, right? Like, there's just so much here. So many different emotions, so much energy. But it's captivating. And it's just musically very complex, but at the same time also pretty straightforward. Yeah, I love this part. The clapping, right? And then when the vocals come back in here, it's folk music, it's indie folk, but such a good song. I mean, I would have. Why is it still playing? I suppose I should reopen that back up. So yeah, anyway, I didn't mean to clean. That is the album Dom by the group Bond с кнопкой. And honestly, that album, the Я не договорила by Деревянные киты, or the next one we're going to talk about, Где же ты, Иванка by hodíla, ízba. Any of these, I don't know which one is the best one this week. These are all really good. I'm kind of going with this one says it's an EP, but it's like 30 minutes long. So this is a full-on album. Because I don't know, this is a little different. What happens when you mix eclectic electronics, funky jazzy instrumentation, and the arrangement sensibilities of the indie rock movement of the early 2000s? You mix that together with traditional Russian folk songs. This album is the answer. The opener here feels like a fever dream of psych electro folk, sort of like of Montreal. Kind of that like Pitchfork best album circa 2005. But in general, the two sides, the wild instrumentation and those traditional folk vocals, they kind of balance each other out on the tracks, which I will get into here in a second. The ladies here, the vocalists, studied folk music at the Музыкальное училище имени Гнесиных, which is like a rather older one here in Moscow, which is connected to folk music and things of that nature. And you can hear that. So, right, tracks oftentimes kind of have a more dialed back section where this traditional song can be featured and be very prominent, and then that rat pack of instrumentation will just sort of come back in and begin to dominate. On a few of the tracks, it's like a 50-50 split where the women get the spotlight first or in the second half, and then vice versa. Right, you can hear the instruments kind of taking the wheel at this point in time. Like, this is definitely more psych. It is more of like indie folk, but with the psychedelic electro aspect end of things. So yeah, right, this is another one of those tracks where the female vocals just drop out towards the end, and we're left with the instrumentalists, who then just kind of spend the next few minutes doing their own thing. But then you have a track like this where everyone just kind of comes in together at the same time here. And again, it's that psychedelic electro folk, indie electro folk. It's a very specific sound. It's a very unusual sound. But I think in the context of traditional Russian music, and just in general what's happening on the Russian music scene in 2025, it's pretty interesting. Realistically, hodíla, ízba here, and Деревянные киты, and the group like Каждый, realistically are kind of like, they probably should just have a little tour together. So it's a very odd album, but I mean that in a good way. Like this. Yeah, like this part right here for sure. I don't think And I have to give a shout out to the final track, the epilogue, which is just this 6-minute instrumental track that just slowly and gorgeously unfolds over the whole. You keep expecting there are no vocals in it. It is totally different from the other tracks on the album, but also feels like a very appropriate end, even though it is kind of at odds with the tracks that came before it. It's kind of morose and quiet. But I'll end with that. So yeah, this is the album «Где же ты, Иванка» by hodíla, ízba. It's not the top pick of the week. It's one of 3 of 4, maybe, if you want to count Ivan Dorn in there as well. Yeah, I can't say which one was the best, because realistically all of those albums are really good. All of the final 4, I think, are albums that are going to be in the discussion for like top pick of the year. And I think there's a conversation to be had for all of them for various reasons. So this, in terms of just the sheer number of top tier music, this has probably been the most stacked week. Now, granted, Ivan Dorn's album came out. Some of them have been a few weeks ago. Like I know the Wooden Whales, Деревянные, киты, their album came out, I think, the first week of the month, and I just didn't get around to it. That was one of the albums I was going to include last week. I just didn't get around to listening to it again. That typically happens. And then Bond's Knopkой actually came out last week, and hodíla, ízba was last week too, but I think Dorn's album came out maybe a week before. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It was still a very stacked week, and just in general, October feels like it has been a very solid month. Maybe for at least for Indian pop, maybe the best month of the year. Obviously, that's one of those things where we'll talk about. I actually was looking at the calendar today, and we have 9 weeks left until the new year, which probably is kind of evident from the week 42 title of the stream here. But the 1st of January is actually on a Thursday. So I guess it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see, and I honestly don't have any idea. I don't know if I've mused about this before, but it'll be interesting for me to see if the album releases start to drop off in the middle of December. I know in the States and in Europe, kind of after the first week of December or so, most music is not being released unless it's Christmas music. I know obviously there are winter songs here that get released every year as well too. But it'll be interesting to see if artists continue to release albums up until the very end, or if there will be a bit of a respite beginning before the holidays and then obviously into the holidays as well. Looking back at the start of the year, the first half, 3 weeks of January were pretty dry. So regardless, when we get to that in probably a month and a half at this point in time, when we get to that stream, when it does eventually come, we can take a look at kind of which months seem to have stacked releases. And we can place our bets for next year, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I need to get going to bed. It's getting close to that time. We've heard all the music. I'm ready to get these headphones out of my head. And you're probably all ready to go on to do whatever it is you're going to go do today. But I'll leave it. I'll wrap it up there. Everyone have a good evening or a good afternoon. I'll be back next Thursday to do this once again at 10 p.m. Moscow time. I'll also be back on Sunday evening and next Wednesday evening at 9 p.m. to do the news. Y'all take care of yourselves. I will see you when I see you, and until then, пока-пока.